Imagine that your entire life you have been trapped in an invisible cage, a cage that keeps you unsatisfied, frustrated, and not knowing why. Buddhism explains this with 3 poisons that poison your mind and keep you in an endless cycle of suffering. One of them makes you desire what you can never possess. Another fills you with rejection and hatred for no reason. And the last one is the most dangerous of all because you don't even realize it's there. Do you want to know what they are and how to free yourself from them? Stay with me because this video could change your life. In Buddhist philosophy, there are 3 invisible forces that keep us trapped in suffering: ignorance, attachment, and aversion. No matter who you are or where you are, these poisons affect all human beings. They are the root of dissatisfaction, emotional pain, and conflicts in our lives. But here's the interesting part. Buddhism doesn't just tell us what they are, it also shows us how to eliminate them. Throughout this video, we will explore each of these poisons in depth. First, we'll look at ignorance, the most subtle and dangerous of all. Then we'll discuss attachment, the trap that makes us crave endlessly. Finally, we'll address aversion, the poison that fills us with rejection and distances us from inner peace. If you understand these concepts and apply Buddhist teachings in your life, you might start seeing the world in a completely new way. Drop a comment below with your insight. We'll revisit it by the end of the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're ready to break free from these mental traps. Your first step toward liberation starts now. Ignorance, the most dangerous poison. From the moment we open our eyes to the world, we learn to perceive reality in a conditioned way. We are taught names, concepts, ideas about what is right and wrong, who we are, and how life works. But we never stop to question whether everything we take for granted is true. Buddhism tells us that the greatest enemy of our inner peace is not suffering itself, but the ignorance that prevents us from seeing its cause. Ignorance is the most dangerous poison because it envelops everything. It's not just a lack of intellectual knowledge, but a deeper blindness, the inability to see reality as it is. One of the biggest mistakes we make is believing that we exist as a separate and permanent self. We cling to an identity, a personal story, an image of ourselves that we believe is fixed. We say, I am like this is what I like, this is what I want, without realizing that everything in us is constantly changing. What we liked 5 years ago may no longer appeal to us today. What we believed about life as children is different from what we believe now. Where is that unchanging self if everything in us changes over time? Ignorance makes us live in an illusion where everything seems solid and permanent. We believe our happiness depends on external things, money, success, recognition, love. But all of that is fleeting. A stable job can disappear overnight. A relationship can change. Our own bodies are constantly aging. Yet, we act as if everything will last forever. Imagine you're dreaming. Within the dream, everything seems real. The places, the people, the emotions. But when you wake up, you realize none of it was solid. It was just a creation of your mind. Ignorance keeps us trapped in a dream where we believe everything is fixed, that things exist independently, when in reality, everything is interconnected and in constant transformation. One of the most insidious aspects of ignorance is that it makes us confuse pleasure with happiness. When we feel pleasure, we think that's happiness. Eating something delicious, receiving praise, buying something new, these give us a momentary sense of satisfaction. But as soon as the pleasure fades, we want more. It's an endless cycle. We try to fill a void with external experiences without realizing that void can't be filled with anything material. Buddhism teaches that the true cause of suffering is ignorance because it makes us cling to things that will inevitably change. When we get something we want, we feel temporary happiness, but sooner or later, the fear of losing it arises, and when we do lose it, we suffer. Thus, we live on an emotional roller coaster, swinging between euphoria and despair, without realizing that the problem isn't in what we gain or lose, but in our perception of reality. If we observe our minds carefully, we can see how ignorance manifests in our daily lives. We make decisions based on desires and impulses without asking whether they will truly make us happy in the long run. We react with anger or sadness to situations without seeing them clearly. We believe our happiness depends on how others treat us, not realizing that this dependence makes us vulnerable. Ignorance also makes us believe in duality, good and bad, success and failure, happiness and suffering. But in reality, everything is intertwined. What seems like a problem today may reveal itself as a blessing in the future. What brings us happiness today may become a burden tomorrow. Nothing is absolute. Everything is relative. The Buddha compared ignorance to a person walking in the dark, stumbling over obstacles without knowing why. Until we turn on the light, we keep falling into the same mistakes, repeating the same patterns, reacting in the same ways. But here's the most important thing. Ignorance is not a life sentence. It's just a cloud covering the clarity of our mind. And like any cloud, it can dissipate. In the second part of this chapter, we'll explore how we can begin to dispel ignorance in our daily lives, how to train our minds to see reality more clearly and free ourselves from the cycle of suffering that keeps us trapped. Attachment, the trap of desire. Attachment is a subtle trap. On the surface, it seems natural, something that's part of life. We become attached to the people we love, the objects that make us comfortable, the happy memories we'd like to relive over and over. But behind every attachment, there's an invisible shadow: fear. Fear of losing what we have, fear of not getting what we desire, fear that things won't go as we want, and that fear is what turns attachment into a poison that keeps us trapped in suffering. Buddhism teaches that attachment arises because we seek happiness in external things. We believe that if we get the perfect partner, the ideal job, others' recognition, or enough money, then we'll be happy. But reality hits us again and again with the same lesson. None of that is permanent. Everything we obtain can disappear at any moment, and when it does, we feel pain, frustration, and emptiness. To understand why attachment is a trap, observe how the mind works when you desire something. First, there's a sense of lack, an idea that something is missing. Then desire arises. I want this. I need that. The mind fills with thoughts about how to obtain it, what will happen when you have it, how your life will be afterward. At that moment, happiness seems within reach. But when you finally get it, the feeling of fulfillment doesn't last long. Soon a new desire, a new goal, a new object of attachment appears. Imagine someone who has always wanted a luxury car. They work hard for years, save every penny, hoping that once they have that car, they'll feel complete. The day comes when they get it, and for a while, they feel excitement, pride, satisfaction. But over time, that emotion fades. The car no longer feels so special. New worries arise: maintenance, fear of scratches, the possibility of theft. And at some point, their mind starts desiring something bigger, something better. The cycle of attachment begins again. This mechanism doesn't just apply to material objects, but to everything in life. We attach ourselves to relationships, seeking someone to make us feel loved and valued. But when a relationship becomes the center of our happiness, the fear of abandonment grows inside us. We become insecure, dependent, unable to enjoy the relationship without fearing its end. And if the relationship does end, the suffering is profound because we don't just lose the person, we also lose the identity we had built around them. Attachment also manifests in how we cling to the past. We relive happy moments over and over, wishing we could return to them. We lament lost opportunities, decisions we didn't make, mistakes we committed. But the past is like a river that has already flowed. No matter how much we think about it, we can't stop time or change what has already happened. Another subtler but equally powerful form of attachment is attachment to ideas. We identify with our beliefs, our opinions, our worldview. If someone questions our ideas, we take it as a personal attack. We close ourselves off to new perspectives, defending our positions as if our identity depended on them. But clinging to a fixed idea prevents us from growing, learning, and adapting to change. The problem with attachment is that it makes us slaves to what we cling to. The more we value something, the more we fear losing it. And the more we fear, the more we suffer. Buddhism teaches that the only way to free ourselves from attachment isn't by rejecting the world or renouncing everything, but by learning to enjoy without clinging, to love without possessing, to live without depending on external things to find peace. In the second part of this chapter, we'll explore how we can begin to let go of attachment without falling into indifference, because letting go doesn't mean stopping love or enjoyment, but learning to do so without fear, without anxiety, without the need to hold on to what can never truly be ours forever. Aversion, the fire of rejection. The third poison is aversion. If attachment is like chains that bind us, aversion is like a fire that burns us from within. It's the reaction of rejection, anger, or fear toward what we don't want to experience. While attachment makes us suffer because we don't want to let go, aversion makes us suffer because we don't want to accept. We try to avoid pain, push away what makes us uncomfortable, eliminate what doesn't meet our expectations. But the more we fight against the inevitable, the more we suffer. Aversion manifests in many forms. Sometimes it's dense hatred, deep resentment towards someone who hurt us. Other times, it's subtle discomfort, irritation toward a person or situation we don't like. It can be paralyzing fear, the desire to escape what makes us feel vulnerable. It can be impatience, frustration, or contempt towards certain people or circumstances. In any of its forms, aversion separates us from the world. It closes us off, hardens us. From a young age, we learn to classify everything into two categories, what we like and what we don't like. We approach what gives us pleasure and flee from what causes discomfort. But life doesn't always give us what we want, and sooner or later we face situations we'd rather avoid. A job we dislike, an argument that fills us with anger, an illness that causes pain, a loss that breaks us inside. If our response to these situations is resistance, rejecting them, getting angry at reality, we only multiply our suffering. Buddhism teaches that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. We can't avoid things we don't like from happening, but we can choose how we react to them. Aversion arises when we resist what is, when instead of accepting reality, we fight against it with hatred, fear, or rejection. But reality doesn't change just because we don't like it. Resistance only harms us. Imagine someone insults you. The automatic reaction is to feel anger, to defend yourself, to counterattack. But if you observe what happens in your mind, you'll notice something interesting. The person's words have no power in themselves. They're just sounds in the air. What makes you suffer isn't the insult itself, but your reaction to it. If you don't identify with those words, if you don't give them importance, they lose their power over you. Aversion also manifests in how we hold on to grudges and resentments. Someone hurts us, and instead of letting go, we cling to the wound. We replay what happened over and over in our minds, feeding our anger, letting the past continue to control our present. But holding a grudge is like holding a burning coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. In the end, the only one who gets burned is you. Fear is another form of aversion. We fear the unknown, failure, rejection. And out of fear, we avoid situations that could help us grow. We don't take risks. We don't open ourselves to new experiences. We don't allow ourselves to step out of our comfort zone, but fear doesn't disappear by avoiding it. It grows stronger. A Buddhist story tells of a man walking through the forest who saw a huge shadow moving among the trees. Terrified, he thought. It was a monster. He felt panic and wanted to run. But instead of fleeing, he decided to approach and look more closely. When he got closer, he realized the shadow was just the shape of a tree projected by the moonlight. His fear had been an illusion. This is how aversion works. To free ourselves from aversion, we must first learn to observe it without reacting. Meditation helps us notice how anger, fear, or frustration arise without letting them drag us away. Instead of reacting immediately, we can pause, breathe, and ask ourselves, does this situation really have so much power over me? Or is it my own mind amplifying it? Another important step is developing compassion. Often hatred toward others arises because we don't see their suffering. We think people who hurt us do so with the intention of harming us, but in reality, they're almost always acting from their own pain. A person full of hatred is someone who has also suffered. When we understand this, instead of reacting with more hatred, we can respond with understanding. But there's an obstacle that prevents us from transforming aversion into compassion, our own ego. We cling to the idea that we're right, that the other is wrong, that we deserve justice. And as long as we keep identifying with these thoughts, we remain trapped in the cycle of anger and resentment. In the second part of this chapter, we'll explore how to let go of aversion without falling into passivity, how to find balance between accepting what we can't change and acting when necessary. Because letting go doesn't mean allowing others to harm us, but learning to respond with clarity, without hatred clouding our judgment. Let's reflect. Ignorance, attachment, and aversion have been the poisons that have kept humanity trapped in suffering since time immemorial. They make us see reality in a distorted way, cling to the fleeting, and reject the inevitable. But Buddhism teaches us that these poisons aren't life sentences. They're opportunities for transformation. When we dissolve ignorance with wisdom, we begin to see the world clearly. When we let go of attachment, we discover that true happiness doesn't depend on external things. When we stop resisting with aversion, we find peace even in difficult moments. No one is completely free from these poisons, but every moment of awareness is a step toward liberation. Every time we notice an attachment and let it go, every time we feel anger and don't react, every time we question our beliefs instead of blindly accepting them, we're transforming our suffering into growth. This is a path of self-knowledge, mindfulness, and the best part is, it's available to everyone. You don't need to retreat to a cave or renounce everyday life. True wisdom is cultivated in daily life, in how we treat others, how we respond to challenges, how we relate to our emotions. If this video has made you reflect, I invite you to subscribe to the channel to keep exploring teachings that can change the way we understand life. I also want to know what you think. Which of these three poisons do you feel has had the most impact on your life? Leave it in the comments, and let's talk about it. Thank you for making it this far. May these teachings help you find more clarity, freedom, and peace on your journey. See you in the next video.